This is the beautiful Dolce Shawl from my new shawl collection called Strick-ly Shawls. Besides having a beautiful curve for the neckline, which keeps the shawl put on your shoulders, it also begins with a beautiful little tab beginning, which keeps the same beautiful garter stitch edging uninterrupted throughout the curve of the neckline. We're going to talk about how to make this one little section which begins your shawl, which is worked from the neck down. The directions for the beginning tab tell you that you need a length of waste yarn, and in this case it's going to be my gray yarn, a crochet hook, and the knitting needles that you will use to knit the shawl. Now with the crochet hook we put a slip knot on the hook. The yarn goes behind the knitting needle, and with the crochet hook we pull the working yarn through the slip stitch on the crochet hook. This puts a stitch over the knitting needle. That's one stitch, and in order to make another one, the working yarn must then go behind the knitting needle. We repeat the same step, and your directions tell you that you need to put on 4 stitches in this manner, and this is a provisional cast on. So I now have 3, and I need 1 more, but I'm going to do a few more just to show you, just so that you can get the hang of how to do this. It really is quite easy. The one thing you must remember is that the working yarn must go behind the knitting needle each time you put a stitch on. And all you're basically doing is dragging that working yarn over your knitting needle, so that when you're finished, you have a nice little army of stitches on your knitting needle, and you have a perfect crochet chain along the bottom of your work. Now I'm going to take out these extra ones that I did because we only need 4 on the needle to begin with. And then when you have 4 on your knitting needle, what's a good idea to do is that you just take your working yarn and you make a couple of just chains, not using your knitting needle in any way, but just making chains with your crochet hook. And that tells you that when you're ready to pull these stitches out, you will pull from the chain end, not the end that had the slip stitch, because those will not come out. It only comes out if you pull from this end. So I'm just going to break this yarn and get rid of that tail. And now you're ready to actually begin your shawl. And your directions tell you, using your shawl yarn, which is, this case, is my yellow yarn, it says to knit 1 row without attaching the yarn at all. So we're just going to take our 4 gray stitches, which are provisionals, and we're just going to knit 4 stitches. The directions then tell you that you're going to repeat this following row, which is CE, knit 3. The CE stands for chained edge. To make a chained edge, the yarn is in the front. You slip the first stitch purlwise, and in order to knit the next 3 stitches, the yarn is returned by going between the needles to the back, and the next 3 stitches are knit. Now your directions tell you to repeat this row a certain number of times until you have enough chains along your side edge. And through the magic of videography, we're going to turn the camera off, but when we come back, I'm going to have enough chain edges all along one side to show you how to pick up and make your tab. And we're back with our tab all completed. Wasn't that fast? Now we're ready to start picking up along our left-hand edge and all around the bottom of the tab. But before we do that, I want to make sure that I have 7 beautiful chained edges to pick up. And I turn my tab to the side where I've made my chained edges, and I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're all set to begin our next row, which tells you to CE, knit 3, and then it says to turn the tab so the left-hand side is facing up. We turn, and we're going to pick up and knit a stitch in each one of these chained edges, and we're going to go under both strands of yarn. We go through with our right-hand needle, wrap the yarn around, and pull up a loop. That's 1 stitch. We do our next one, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. I now have 11 stitches and we need to get 3 more, and those will be our provisionals. And what's really kind of cool now about using these 2-color yarn is that you can see our three gold provisional stitches right there in the field of charcoal yarn. So before pulling your charcoal yarn out, if you wish, you can pick up those little guys with your left hand needle. 1, 2, 3, and then you won't be so scared when you go to pull out the charcoal yarn. I'm going to pick this one up backwards and then fix them later. So now that I've speared those 3, I can go back to my chain edge of my provisional and I can just pull from that end and everything's going to pop out. There we go. And I pull that provisional out. There's my 3 stitches and there's my backwards one. And now I have to knit them. So I just switched him around. I knit 1, 2, 3. I now should have 14 stitches on my needle. And remember that when we began knitting, we used this tail, which we didn't secure in any way. So give that tail a little tug, and then you can weave him in later. Now we're ready to begin our first wrong side row, and our directions will tell us that we're going to CE, knit 2, and then the directions will tell you what to do with the rest of the row. And that is your beginning tab, and you're all set for a beautiful seamless beginning to your shawl. So from Ken and Candace Strick, happy Strick-ly shawl knitting!